Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Enjoying those biscuits? Good. So, my name is Nick Allen. I am on the Community Impact Team at United Way of the Greater Triangle. I am part of a team who has the distinct pleasure of working alongside our 17 collaboratives in a much different role than the traditional United Way space. We have shifted from a funder to a partner at the table. This is a pretty good indication of the way that collaboration works, right? We're sitting around the table problem solving, really keeping families at the center of our work and reimagining the ways that we deliver services in the Triangle. I would start this off by saying one of the most debilitating words in the English language, or any language for that matter, is the word no. Imagine if you can think back to the last time you heard the word no, how that made you feel. Imagine if that no was of consequence, it prevented you from having something that you really needed or wanted. Okay? And so imagine that over a lifetime. Imagine a generation of consistently hearing the word no, no, no. What does that do? What does that indicate for your life? What is it a reminder of? It's a reminder of barriers. It's a reminder of a lack of access to the resources that you need. It's a reminder that you're powerless in your life. Okay? And so what we want to do at the United Way is shift that narrative and get families to yes. We want to hear, they want to hear yes as often as possible, and we're here to reduce those barriers, to empower families, and to provide access to the resources necessary for them to fulfill their lives. And so we'll get started here with the panel. I'm sitting in between a great partnership that works out of Wake County known as the Wake Child and Family Violence Prevention Collaborative. They can probably do it much better than I can, so we'll start off with introductions and just a few sentences about the work that your particular agency does in the collaborative work.
Start with me. Good morning. My name is Tiandra Miller, and I am with Legal Aid of North Carolina. I serve as their statewide project director for their domestic violence and sexual assault practice group. Legal Aid is a 501c3 law firm, or I like to call us a social justice law firm. We provide services to the economically disadvantaged, as well as domestic violence and sexual assault survivors. Our role in this collaborative endeavor is to provide the free legal representation to folks needing our services. So that means we accompany them to court, we obtain protective orders, and we also provide advice and support with other ancillary family law and civil matters.
My name is Michelle Zeckman. I'm the CEO of Haven House Services. Each one of us brings a different expertise to the table in this collaborative, and we bring the expertise of working with youth and young adults that have experienced family violence, that have had trauma in their history, and then they're also starting to act out in their own ways that reflect the trauma and difficult experiences that they have with their families. We really believe that all youth should have the opportunity to succeed and be successful in their lives.
Good morning, my name is Seema Kak. I work at Kiran. What Kiran in Hindi means a ray of light. And until 2008, there was no such service for South Asian women or South Asian victims of domestic violence. So Kiran was founded in 2008 as the people in this community saw that the rising need with that population, there was really no help. So Kiran currently is the only organization in the state of North Carolina that serves South Asian victims of domestic violence. We're trying, and like I said, we're relatively new, but right now our approach is education. So we do a lot of outreach, we do a lot of tabling at colleges, and then definitely case management for the victims. And we could not do it, we're so small but growing, and we could not do it without the partners that are here.
Good morning, I'm Carrie Christensen with Interact, and Interact works to save lives, rebuild lives, and secure safer futures for victims of domestic and sexual violence throughout Wake County. So we are the only comprehensive service provider for that population, and we have a multitude of services in-house that we provide to victims.
Okay, thank you. So the name of the collaborative is pretty self-explanatory, right? Wake Child and Family Violence Prevention Collaborative. Can you kind of frame the problem of violence in our community and kind of how it manifests itself in the families that you serve?
Sure. So each year we provide direct services to about 15,000 folks in Wake County. So that's a lot of people in Wake County, and we know that domestic violence and particularly sexual violence is very underreported. So those are just the families that are coming forward and seeking help. And domestic violence manifests itself in multiple ways. It affects all of us. It affects our entire community, the schools, your neighborhoods. It is, every time you turn on the TV, somebody else has been killed. This latest shooting, there was a big link to domestic violence with the shooter. We're seeing in these mass killings throughout the United States that there is, I think every time there has been a link with domestic violence back to the shooter. So it definitely impacts not just our community, but communities throughout the United States.
I would like to piggyback on what Carrie said about the impact it has to our community. A couple of years ago, there was a study out of UNC Charlotte that stated it had such a financial impact. I think it was 1 billion plus on our businesses as people in all segments of society. When there's domestic violence, it does impact the bottom line as well. We now have laws for people seeking protections. Like if you have folks here needing to take time off to get a protective order, that person is protected. They cannot be fired for seeking a protective order. As well as housing, the intersection with housing. People cannot be evicted from public or private housing solely on the basis of domestic violence. And in fact, there are some protections around housing, such as allowing victims to leave a lease, prior to the termination of that lease, having locks changed and things of that nature. So I think as people are understanding this as a more community effort and how it interplays with different segments, you're starting to see laws catch up to offer that level of protection. And one thing I just wanted to add when I said we provide legal services for economically disadvantaged folks, for a piece for people seeking protective orders, and this is helped with our within our collaborative, for people seeking protective orders, there is not an income limit due to the cycle of violence and people needing that immediate help. So we have special funds to help people in those circumstances.
So from our perspective, we work with youth and young adults, as I mentioned earlier, and a lot of times we serve about 1,500 kids each year, and a lot of those kids come to us through the juvenile justice system, through school referrals, through homeless services agencies like that are sitting at this table. And one of the primary, sort of consistent things that we see with all the youth that we serve is they all have trauma. And so trauma drives and affects behavior. So when you work with kids that are actually getting themselves in trouble, that are getting themselves into situations where they're running away from home, they are getting themselves into difficult situations, we see a lot of that comes from family violence, from family domestic violence issues, abuse, neglect, those sorts of things. And so from our perspective, this was a good place for us to be because we are working with these agencies already with many families, and the actual focus of making sure that we are all sort of wrapping services around these families and meeting the needs of these families is a really important place for, at least from our perspective, for our agency to be, and having the resources. We can't do it all, and so having the resources of these other organizations to actually have an impact on family violence in our community is really important.
Okay. Yeah, I think the idea of collaboration is that, like Michelle mentioned, is that partners are in lockstep with each other to surround victims and families with the services that they need. Where in a system otherwise they would have hopped from agency to agency without the efficiencies, without the relationships, without the network of support that would ensure they get the resources necessary to be successful. And thinking about this idea of collaboration, we obviously have treatment, right? But we also have prevention. It's in the name of the collaborative. Can you talk about that balance of treatment and prevention? Which partners play a role in each one of those things, and then talk about the balance that you hope to seek in the collaborative work that you do.
I can go first. So domestic violence, I think it manifests itself in the same way in any population, across the globe. But for minorities, especially when we're dealing with South Asian women, there are added layers to what we all have to deal with. There's a language barrier, there's a cultural barrier. For South Asian women, there's a big, huge load they carry about shame and guilt and not the family name, the patriarchy that exists. So for us at Kirin, we also have to go through those layers and work with that before and a lot of our partners will pass on these clients to us because there are those barriers. And we walk them through those. But then we again need all the partners to help us with, because whether it's legal aid, whether it's their children that need help, that's where the collaborative again comes in. But as far as education, a lot of the clients that we serve have grown up in other countries. We serve like 11 countries, clients from 11 countries. They've grown up with a different ideology, different cultural, whatever they bring with them. So we're hoping that if we, while serving them, also work with the younger generation. So we just had a teen workshop where, the teens are seeing the same thing in their homes, but we're trying to say, look, this is wrong. If this is what you're seeing, this is domestic violence. So awareness, we go to all the colleges in the area, we're getting the young adults there to come and become aware of what domestic violence is, and then how they can help in their homes, in the community, bring awareness, and even reach out to us when there's a need.
At Interact, we do a lot of prevention programming in the schools, and we've recently created a peer advisory group and a peer led education program. So we train peers to actually go out and teach each other and educate each other. It comes a lot better from peers than if I'm in the school trying to talk to peers about domestic and dating violence. So we look at prevention. We have a strong prevention on that side, but then also just thinking about prevention and prevention/intervention and stopping the cycle of domestic violence. And that's a lot of what Michelle was talking about in reaching the children who have been affected and are growing up in these violent homes. We know that girls who grow up in violent homes are more likely to become victims, and little boys who grow up are more likely to become perpetrators. So that prevention/intervention piece to really stop that cycle, and that's really what this collaborative is about, is reaching that multi-generational level so that we can hopefully stop that cycle.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. The idea that we work with the adults in the household as well as the children is a two-generational model that I think works very well. And it's evidenced in the 17 collaboratives that we support at United Way, that we really hope that the two-gen model not only treats but also prevents future issues. On the topic of children, are there specific services for children? What are they, and kind of how are they delivered in this particular model?
Yeah, and so and then there's a couple partners that aren't here as well that we work with around kids. But For us, we work again with the sort of middle school, late elementary school, middle school, older kids that are having behavior problems in school, that are having, mental health problems. And so we provide a variety of services, but primarily through this program, we provide case management, we provide mental health and substance abuse assessments for the youth. We look at what services are needed to provide ongoing support and kind of help that youth identify what it is their goals are, along with the family, and what it is that they want to achieve, and help them achieve that. So if there are problems in school and they need help with academics, we will be working with them to identify, if there is tutoring needed, or working with the teachers. If they are having problems, sort of managing themselves in school, we will try to find ways, we have interventions that we provide to help change some of those behaviors. What I want you to hear is it's very individualized, for all of us. I think the services that we provide, we sit down as a group and say, all right, here's the family, like who's doing what's going on, what services are you providing, and what is it that the family want, what is it from their perspective that they want, not what we are telling them they need. I think that's an important part of the work that we do.
From a legal perspective, what we do during this very chaotic time when a family is going through the court system, we will help construct orders that will allow children to have some safe contact with either parents as they're working through this. We have in Wake County supervised visitation centers. We work with our collaborative partners, but our role would be to have an order in place that if there were visitation, that it's going to happen in a safe way for the children. And we represent children too. Sometimes the child is the victim, and will represent the parent as a guardian ad litem on behalf of the child, if that child needs a particular protective order as well.
We have multiple programs for children. We have support groups for women, and the groups are going on for the children. So they're tailored to the ages of the kids. We have about 5 different groups that are happening simultaneously while moms are in group. We also do trauma screenings for kids so that we can assess the level of trauma that they've experienced, and then make referrals according to how their assessment comes out. So we have programming to children is an important part of what we do.
Okay. Michelle mentioned the idea and kind of set the image of sitting around the table with a family at the center and determining from the partners around the table who is going to support and how they're going to support this particular family, right? So there's individual services and roles that partners take. I would imagine through that process you learn a lot about each other as well. Talk a little bit about what you've learned about each other through the collaborative process, and be kind of specific as possible to kind of indicate the level of the relationship and the collaborative work.
I can go first. So, especially, like I said, Kieran is relatively new and smaller, and it takes a lot of effort, really a lot of courage for a person of South Asian descent to come forward and come to that point where she will say, okay, I do need a DVPO. Then the second hurdle is going in front of a judge to get that order. So our building, our office is actually in the Interact building, which is, having this mother sitting over us with all the resources that, we don't have as yet. But we have the privilege of getting the DVPO done in the Interact office, so that first step of that person who has never left the house to go in front of a judge in a courthouse, we bypass that. So that individual will come into the office, and we, in the comfort of as comfortable as it can be, we can do the initial DVPO right there in the office. And then they need legal, it's usually a 10-day hearing. In 10 days they need to go to court. And again, we have the advantage of having legal aid come to the building, come to Interact office and the Kieran office, and meet with the client there. And depending on their financial situation, like she said, they work with them and get them ready for that 10-day that they will be appearing in court. At the same time, we have other agencies coming in mental health services, so they will also come to our office. It's such a collaborative that initially that person is so shaken, so broken up, so scared that to send that person to 10 different places would just not work. So, and also the hiding it from, they don't have a car, they may not have other resources, so they have to hide all this. So if they come one day and they're able to get all these services, it just makes life so much more easy for our clients.
Right, I would like to mention what Seema is talking about. Some of our offices are co-located in one building, and that's great, but beyond the co-location, which makes it easier, when I was reflecting on, how it works, oftentimes we're at a table such as this, and in theory what each partner does. There's an agency, Kieran, Safe Child, what people do, but I really think the strength of it is the consultation, because even when we're consulting about a particular issue, a client is interesting how people could weigh in a way that may even be a little outside of the box of just what they're doing, because you're putting all the ideas out there, and you really come up with I think a really cohesive and strong solution, as opposed to, you just stay in this box. It's like a really meshing of all of our education, our background, and our deliverables. So I think that is really a strong suit of our collaboration. And knowing that I can call any of my collaborators outside of, the formal meetings to talk about a particular issue.
I mean, I think they all covered it really well, but I think the thing that I want you to hear is there's no wrong door. So if you come into our organization as a referral from the school system and we find out, and this has happened like last week, where we get into a situation and there's a very serious domestic violence situation going on in that family, that the referral was because the kid was acting out in school. I mean, immediately we have all these resources that we can bring that we bring to bear to help this and support this family. So, whatever door a family walks in for whatever reason, the ability to kind of connect with our other partners is really important.
Kendra, you mentioned strong solutions.
Yes.
How do you know that you're being successful? How do you measure success in your collaborative work?
You would get me with that one. That's an interesting question, because it's also personal and individualized, right? I would say the most obvious way to measure when you see the success of a client that has moved from being in a very difficult family violence situation to being successful. Someone that's been able to move to a safer home or obtain employment. Personally, I mean, I've actually seen physical transformation the time somebody walks in my office and how they look by the time you're through the process. A person comes back and someone's like, who are you? But just to see that transformation of someone that's coming out of the violence. And obviously, like anyone else, I mean, we look at numbers from my firm of how many protective orders we obtain. But we also like to look at the more holistic is what we're getting here. Not just the protective order, but the other services people have gotten from our partners, or even within my firm, if I've referred people to other lawyers with certain specialties to help them. So that's how I measure. I measure it by our clients being able to move forward in a positive way.
Anybody else?
I'll just say something quick. Just adding on to that, a measure for us is a client walking into our office yesterday, all dressed up because she was, there was an interview for her to, I think for a manager's position at her job, and a year and a half ago, she's the same person who had to escape in the middle of the night because a knife was held to her throat, and she had a year-old baby with her. And that is success that happened again through all the collaborators, because she stayed in the shelter for over a year with us. in the meantime, daycare, getting her back into being proficient in speaking English so she could go interview at different places, has a job, has an apartment. And like I said, yesterday came in all dressed up because she's going to be a manager now. And so that's how we measure success. But again, everyone has played a role in her getting her there.
Okay. We heard about, no wrong doors. We heard about measuring success through a change in a family's hope. But let's talk about kind of the collaborative's hopes and dreams for a little bit, right? This is always a fun question. If you had a magic wand, what is the next thing for this group of partners to consider?
This is always the fun question when we do these. I mean, it's, that's the difficult part, is that it's funding, it's support we need through housing. We need housing supports for our family. That's one of the biggest barriers that we have when we're working with a family is if they end up in the shelter and they are moving on to a new life, being able to find housing in a market that is really hard to find housing that's affordable. So that's one of the big, sort of things that we dream about having more of for our group.
Yeah, housing is definitely would be the wand that I would wave if I had one. But I think in addition to that, when I look at the collaborative and kind of what we've accomplished over the last couple years, I think that we have been able to fulfill some of those hopes and dreams that we had thought about. And so we're getting Michelle's staff at Haven House is coming on Thursday to sort of cross-train our staff. And so we're heading down this road over the next year where we're going to all sort of cross-train each other. And we're all, we all know each other really well. We can pick up the phone and talk to each other. But I think that was one of the sort of hopes that we had talked about, is to make sure that we go beyond just knowing about each other, and so to make sure that that each agency is really interconnected. So that's something that we're looking at and working on, and perhaps even doing some lethality training for all the agencies. So there are certain services that we need in addition throughout our community, but I think that through this collaborative we've been able to really move forward and meet some of those hopes and dreams that we all had too.
My wand would be for us to have the capacity to serve more clients, because I just think this is so beneficial to people, and I think the need always outstrips the resources. There's this area, there's so much underreporting, but even for those who report, to be able to access these services, it's, I think of a resource issue. It's always nice to be able to increase our capacity to serve. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, the idea of a magic wand, that is not to discredit the work and the success of this collaborative group, because we know that it's not magic. Right? We know that it's a lot of hard work. We know that it's a lot of intentional work. But there's still more work to be done. There's still more support to be needed. Can you talk a little bit about what does this collaboration need? Not only from the United Way, but from the community in general, from individuals like folks sitting around this table, but also the corporate partners that we can engage in this work at the United Way.
Well, money always.
Right.
Don't be around the bush.
When we're talking about what we need, I mean, all of us here would agree that resource is, yes, we said serving more folks. The need is growing. Our community is growing. What is it? 67 people a day, I think, are moving into Wake County. So. The area's growing, the needs are growing. So resources, I think the other thing that you all can do is talk to people about the collaborative and agencies within the collaborative, so that people in the community know that we're here and know what services are available. which I think is really important too.
I wanted to add, just because there's a law firm as part of this collaborative. As I indicated in my introduction, we are a nonprofit law firm. And I think sometimes that's an oxymoron when people are talking about money, at least in our experience, like, oh, there's this law firm. But oftentimes people think legal aid is part of the state. We're not. We survive off of donations and funds and grants. So we are all situated. We're all nonprofit organizations. So lending what Carrie said about money, I was a little shy. I'm so glad that you just said that. But in addition, I don't know if your firm has in-house counsel, but from a legal perspective, we can really use pro bono assistance. So we work a lot with the law schools. We work a lot with corporate attorneys who we can train up to handle some of these cases for the protective orders. And so, yeah, if you have any counsel in the area, they could contact us and we could bring them on board. So we like kind of pro bono services as well.
Okay. And so kind of in conclusion, just to drive home a few points, right? This collaborative work is really individual agencies working in lockstep to reduce the barriers that families have and provide that answer yes as often as possible, right? And this is all aimed at this group and the 16 others across the triangle are all aimed at improving the social mobility of families born into poverty, right? So the idea is that we work with the most vulnerable families and children, and we provide a network of services and supports that gets them to being socially mobile and improving their life situation. So I'd like to thank this particular group, the Williams family, for their work, and I'll turn it over to Deanna. First, do we have any questions for the...
Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So is United Way new to this collaboration?
Is United Way new to this collaboration?
Yeah. Or has United Way been working with these separate organizations for a while, or is this a new?
Yeah,
endeavor?
so the collaborative model kind of took form in the way that it is now about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And this group has been with us since the beginning of that journey. Absolutely.
So prior to the new model, United Way was working with, I know they were working with Interact, I know they were working with Haven House, and so they were working with all these agencies, and the new strategy for United Way, or the new model, collective impact model, was around, a lot of times when people have domestic violence issues, they got a lot of other issues that they're dealing with, so just providing them safety is like putting a Band-Aid on it.
Sure.
And the goal of the collaborative is to bring the services together to build a relationship with the people that are struggling and help them come up out of the situation they're in and be successful.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I actually have one, and I work here. Other than the obvious things about violent people in the community committing more violence and violence moving through generations, as you spoke about a little bit earlier, could you talk about some of the negative impacts of family violence on kids that maybe we don't think about? Like those adverse childhood experiences.
Yay! You know about adverse childhood experiences? Yay. Yeah, I really totally would encourage you all, if you haven't seen the Resilience movie out that just came out that talks about adverse childhood experiences, which talks about the fact that these things that happen to kids when they're small have a lifetime effect on their health, their mental health, their success, their things in their lives. So when you were traumatized as a child, it impacts things like obesity and other health kind of indicators. It impacts your success in your future, and that's that's an important part of what we're hoping when we talk about the prevention versus intervention. I think it's a very weird sort of line, because sometimes what we're doing, prevention for one thing, we're actually doing an intervention on another thing. But that's part of what this is that two-generational approach. When you are intervening with this family, you're hopefully preventing and mitigating those adverse childhood experiences so that those kids actually have the opportunity to be successful and not have the same experiences as adults. So it's an important part. That's a great question.
I think an interesting opportunity for this group to learn more about adverse childhood experiences is through the brains simulation that will be conducted here next week. It's a really interactive way for everybody to kind of get a sense of what some of these adverse childhood experiences actually do to the formation of the brain from a very early age and impact your lifelong ability to thrive as young people and as adults. So I invite you to that to learn a little bit more in a deeper way.
Free breakfast this week, free lunch next week. And seriously, encourage some of the folks you work with to come out and learn a little bit more. We will welcome having a few more people in the room. Obviously appreciate you guys being here.
So you've heard some of the voices of one of our collaboratives this morning. I thought we'd take another 3 minutes to let you guys hear the voices of some of the other 16 different collaboratives that we work with and partner with through a quick video. So I'll go ahead and get that started. There we go.
I really want those folks who engage with the United Way to be able to articulate the answer to the question of why United Way.
It's not sitting in rooms across tables and building the futures of others without inviting them to be a part of that. And that's what's different about all of this.
Well, with this centralized strategy, with this centralized convener, well, the triangle has success. The triangle has a lot of success. Does the triangle have all of the success without United Way? I don't think so.
United Way has been a great resource for us. They've been very supportive of everything that we do. They make sure that we have all of the tools that we need to succeed. They're always in our meetings and giving input on everything that we do.
But I will tell you that it has turned into something very different. Like, working with this collaborative is a highlight. Like, I look forward to every other week because we intentionally stop and we sit around the table and we brainstorm. We come up with ideas and resources for the families that we're helping. And as a team, we just support each other.
And that's what this is. It's not just the partnership between the organizations. It's not just the partnership between the business owners and our government and non-profit organizations. It's a partnership with the clients. It's not talking at them, it's talking to them.
It enables us to be nimble and innovative and responsive to what the community needs, and for that we're appreciative.
The mistake is to think that we as organizations, as individuals, can do this alone. That's a mistake.
Whoever donates, you're donating to someone's future, their child's future, their mom's future. So
there are different people that have different needs, that need different resources, and all of the donations or anything that you give to United Way is truly making a difference in the lives of other people.
By giving to United Way, you are giving to an organization who also has this collaborative vision of putting money in organizations that are going to do not only great work, but different work.
And I know that because our kids and our parents tell us that we're doing exactly what we should be doing.
And that's powerful. So it's not that we get the opportunity to sit behind closed doors and decide their future. They're a part of that. They're a part of every part of this process. And that makes a difference, and that's powerful. And that's how we live united on a common ground and build a stronger foundation so that we all can partake in that.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Eric Buchanan, and I'm the CEO of United Way of the Greater Triangle. It's a real honor to be with you today. Thank you all for being here and spending a little time with us. I've been here 6 months, so I'm by no means a KG veteran to United Way. I really learned a lot from this panel today. You all are doing heroic work, and we're honored to be partners with all of you. You heard Nick say that we're trying to get to yes for children and families, and we're trying to get you to get to yes as well. Yes is youth success, early childhood success, and stable homes. It's an acronym. I want to tell you a little bit about 3 reasons why I'm at United Way and some other numbers that you ought to be aware of as you think about whether or not you want to get to yes or not in terms of building your own philanthropic portfolio, and why you want to give a few bucks or maybe a few more bucks out of your paycheck to go to this kind of work. You all have choices to make in terms of how you invest your money, and those are obviously very personal choices. And I want to get personal with you here right now and talking a little bit about what brought me to the work. 3 things you should know about me. One is I am the first person in my family to go to college. I was by no means grew up with the kind of hardships that you heard described here, but it takes everyone in a family to jump a class and to have that kind of social mobility. And in my particular case, I'm aware of my privilege as a white male. I'm aware of the fact that my parents got into a school district that was a higher performing, more privileged school district at the right time. There's a lot of luck and positioning involved to that kind of social mobility. So that's one thing you should know about me. 2 is I am a parent. And you all look a little young to be parents. I'm going to have a few parents in here. Any parents? All right, we got a couple. Those of you who are parents, you have entered the most exclusive club of insanity that there possibly could be. We are all crazy about our kids. Those of you who have parents, and that is all of you, I'm sure of it, know how crazy your parents are. And you don't really understand that until you become one yourself. My 2 daughters, Scarlett and Elsa, the sun rises and sets on them. Scarlett is 12, Elsa is 8. If you have a few hours, I can tell you why they're the 2 greatest kids in the world. And it's that kind of, and I want everything for them, right? I will sell the farm, like my parents did for me, to ensure that they can have more opportunities, be it swimming, be it mental health services, be it anything that they need, health services. That is the number one thing that I think about every day is my own kids, right? And my own family. And I think that makes me human. That's part of the great human experience. The 3rd thing you should know about me is that I come to this work as a lifelong educator and teacher. I started my career as a teacher in the South Bronx. That's where I met my wife, Lisa. My wife, Lisa, is from Warren County. I don't know how familiar any of you are from Warren County, North Carolina, but it is a long way from the South Bronx. And then I went on to a career working with Teach for America, working for New Leaders for New Schools, doing principal development work, and also worked in a number of school models, KIP, the New Schools Project, and then most recently was the Senior Education Advisor to the Governor of the State of North Carolina. If you have a few hours about that, I have the scars to prove it on that one. But what I learned in that continuum of my life's journey is that in order for us to expect the kind of social mobility that we want to see in our own kids, in our greater society, and in our home, everybody has to show up. And what you have here is everybody showing up and working collaboratively with children and families at the center. As JR said, there are 200,000 souls in this community that are suffering from the ravages of poverty every day. And why should you care about that more than you care about other things? Because you have a lot of choices about where to give your dollars. You have a lot of choices about where to spend your dollars. This is our home. Whether you just got here or whether you've been here all your life, this is your backyard now. And you have to care about those closest to you more. That's the choice that I've made. I've done national work, I've done statewide work. But I am committed to this space in the Triangle. I live in Durham. I'm going to grow a beard pretty soon. I'm going to be a hipster. It's going to be awesome. But I care about this place because it's cool, it's a fun place to be, and if you care about it from that perspective, it's a great way to move up, right? For all of you, for all of us who have, regardless of where your circumstances are bringing you, you have won the lottery here today. You are sitting here at CIS, at Deloitte, you are educated, you have a good job, and something to get you here. You got there was a lot of work done somewhere along the line to get you here today. And we all are coming from a place of tremendous abundance. And what I would say is that in the Triangle here today, according to a recent study, if you are born into poverty in the Triangle, they did a study of the 50 largest metropolitan areas in this country, and we were 48th in terms of social mobility. So what that means very simply is if you are poor in this community, you stay poor. And if you care about this community, I would posit that United Way needs to be your first dollar in terms of what, because we are supporting over 70 heroes like the ones you heard today to work collaboratively to get to yes. And what I would ask is that you get a little uncomfortable with whatever it is you donate, not just in terms of money, but in terms of your time, in terms of your headspace to this, in terms of your ownership of this problem in your backyard. It is very easy. I do it all the time. We all do it all the time. You come to work, you drive by, walk by, talk to these people every day. And as you know, certainly with the domestic violence, everything is in the shadows. Let's lift this out of the shadows so we can solve problems. We've got some of the smartest people in the country at this table here today. And in this community. It's the largest group of PhDs in the country in the Triangle. We can do this. But we cannot do it alone, and we cannot do it by sitting on the sidelines. So that's why I'm at United Way, and I hope you will join us in this effort, because my goal is to eliminate poverty in this community, to be the first place in the country and in the world to eliminate poverty. Everyone needs the opportunity to move up and have the privilege that you have here today. And I'm so grateful to be here with you, and thanks again for listening, and thanks for spending an hour with us.